has been a great deal of buzz in Washington and literally around the world following President Trump's Liberation Day celebration, where he announced tariffs on a whole host of nations, both allies and adversaries alike. The tariffs are set to go into effect today. How will this affect Americans and their wallets? And how will it affect trade relations? Here to discuss this and more, Congressman Marlin Stutzman, who serves on the House Committee on Financial Services and the Budget Committee. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of Indiana. Congressman Stutzman, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
Great to see you, Tony. Thanks for having me on this afternoon.
So Marlin, as an entrepreneur, you have worked and built businesses in the manufacturing, agricultural, and food services spaces. What's your assessment first of President Trump's Liberation Day policies and these new tariffs?
Tony, as you mentioned, coming from Indiana and being a businessman myself in both agriculture and manufacturing, we've seen many years go by where we know that the American manufacturer and producer is at a disadvantage compared to other countries in the world. And again, we don't want a government like China. We don't want a government that is going to manipulate the currency and going to, of course, have low standards for labor and environment. But we're America, and we are the most productive nation in the world in history. And the fact that we are seeing goods leaving the country, there was a lot of discussion about free trade over the past several decades. Well, what that's done, a lot of the manufacturing has left the country. It's gone to places like China, Mexico, and other parts of the world. And I was talking to a CEO from the RV industry, which is in northern Indiana, and said, at the time it made sense because you could buy a lot of product material at a cheaper price from China and ship it here to the United States and build RVs and ship them down the road. And it was good for the consumer. But what's happened is we've hollowed out our manufacturing, our factories. They don't have the same, we don't have the same ability and capability that we used to. And now we've built up China's economy over the past several decades, and it's now coming back to haunt us. And that's what President Trump is simply doing, is that he's going to level the playing field. China can play certain games within their market, but we've got to make sure that we look out for the American manufacturer and the American economy by having a level playing field that's good for Americans and is fair with our partners around the world.
Congressman, you're absolutely right. We've seen a lot of manufacturing in my home state of Louisiana. We've seen this over the last couple of decades. Even when I was in office there, we saw manufacturing move to Mexico, in other parts of the world where labor was cheaper. Are you concerned, though, that there's going to be a lag time in terms of American manufacturing being able to get up and running and a rising cost of these cheap products that have been flooding our markets from China, Taiwan, Vietnam, and that the consumer, already kind of pinched, given the Biden economy that we've been living under, are you concerned about the impact in the short term upon the consumer?
Yes, absolutely. And we know for a fact that there's going to be people that take advantage of the situation, and speculation is going to be built into pricing that tariffs are going to hurt them. But I think one of the things that President Trump is going to do is he's going to focus on, and Republicans in the House and Senate, we're going to focus on keeping taxes low. We're set to see the largest tax increase in American history kick in at the end of this year. So we're going to make sure that we make those tax rates either permanent or at least extended. Also, energy policy. President Trump has a strong energy policy plan that I believe will help keep energy prices low. And then deregulation. I mean, Tony, you and I see how big Washington, D.C. has become, and it's built on the business of government in Washington. And it's estimated over $1.3 trillion in regulation, cost of regulations on the U.S. economy. And so just watching President Trump cut regulation, cut bureaucracy is also going to be a help to this transition. So, yes, there will be some moments where you'll probably see some price increases, but I think we'll hopefully see that settle out over the next 6 months. Here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we just had an announcement by GM that they're going to expand production of the trucks that they build right here in Northeast Indiana at the truck plant. So that's already happening. There's so many other announcements of investment from companies back into the United States because they want to avoid the tariffs, whether it's in Mexico or any other part of the world.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Regulation has been a huge factor in driving up cost of doing business in the United States. I want to get to a piece of legislation you introduced last week about protecting the American beef industry. But before I do that, you mentioned the tax increase that's coming if the 2017 tax cuts that were championed by President Trump last time are not extended. The Senate taking that up today, their budget resolution. They're going to be into the weekend doing that. What's the latest on the budget resolution coming out of the Senate, which sets the stage for the reconciliation of the budget?
Yeah, well, we'll see what they pass out of the Senate. You know, many of us are a little nervous right now from some of the numbers that we're hearing and what they're actually going to cut. We had set the number at $2 trillion over 10 years. That's $200 billion over a 10-year period. So 2 trillion over 10. And it looks like that number may be 300 billion over a 10-year period in the Senate. So we're far apart when it comes to those cuts. And again, I mean, we're seeing this with the DOJ team that is finding so much waste, fraud, and abuse in all facets of government. And so I'm hopeful that Republicans will take this so seriously. We had several big voices coming into Congress over the past couple of weeks. Ray Dalio, who's a huge hedge fund guy from New York, came in this last week and was talking to some of us budget committee members and was asked, you know, can we restructure our debt? What can we do? And his answer was that he didn't think that those who held American debt would even be interested at all in restructuring debt because we haven't done our part in cutting spending and making sure the economy is strong. So we're headed towards a heart attack if we don't do something very quickly. All the signs and symptoms are showing, they're beeping red that we've got to do something very quickly.
Yeah, they've been beeping for decades, and we've just basically closed our eyes to those warning lights. So I'm grateful that there are those like you that, and the Speaker is among them, in the ranks of Republicans that are saying we have to deal with this now. Let me go to the legislation you introduced, Protect American Beef Act, because that applies to what we're talking about when it comes to unfair competition. Talk about that.
Yeah, and I think this gives us a really good example. Sometimes, we talk in the macro sense and we don't quite understand, well, why do we need to raise tariffs on this particular country or another? Well, what's happened here with Australian beef, of course, is a great brand. It's a great product. We buy a lot of Australian beef here in the United States. But back in the early 2000s, remember the cases of mad cow disease? Well, Australia banned American beef from being shipped into Australia. They never opened that back up. And they've used that excuse for the last 20 years that we don't have the proper protocols in place to ship beef from the United States to Australia. So, these are our friends, and I love Australians. I love Australia as a country. They produce great products. They're allies, but my belief is that it goes two ways. If we're going to be friends and allies, that it should be good for both countries. And this is one particular example where they, of course, take a lot of pride in Australian beef, and they should. But the American farmer also shows a lot of pride and takes a lot of pride in the beef products that we produce here in the United States. And so I dropped a bill that would raise the tariffs on Australian Wagyu, which is a wonderful breed, a very, very tasty breed, one that's growing in popularity, which originally comes from Japan. But this is an industry, about 50% of the Wagyu that's consumed here in the United States comes from Australia. So we kind of took a rifle shot here and said, you know what, we're going to go right after the breed that they are building rapidly, and they also have a currency advantage with them having about a 35% discount with their currency compared to the U.S. dollar. So they can enter into the American market much easier and cheaper. And so what's happened is that American restaurants and food buyers, they buy the Australian product because it's cheaper, and it leaves the American producer at a disadvantage. And we're building again the Australian beef industry rather than building the American industry.
Yeah, that's a great example, Marlin, of what the president's trying to do overall with his tariff policy is just level the playing field. Now, I do hope we're up against
That's
the break,
right.
but I talked about this yesterday. I do hope when we look at these tariffs with countries like China, North Korea, and Russia, other places, that we consider other factors such as human rights issues and so forth
Right.
when we look at these tariffs. Marlin Stutzman, I want to thank you for joining us. Always great to see you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Tony. Great to be with you.